And although voting is the central theme here for tonight, we also recognize the current political turmoil in Bermuda, as well as the lack of contribution given by young people. It is often said that decisions are made in the best interest of the sustainability and the future of Bermuda. Yet little consultation has been established with the future of Bermuda, our young people. Thus, it is vital that we not only feel a part of the process in shaping Bermuda, but that we contribute also to its progress. We believe that all persons in attendance this evening will walk away revived and reassured that this thought-provoking dialogue is a positive step in the right direction to help set Bermuda on the path to progress. We have a very diverse and cross-sectional panel who will be leading us in hot-butting topics tonight. We are joined by former Parliamentarian, the Honorable John Barritt, JP, who will speak to the history of the electoral system in our island. Ms. Aminah Simmons and Ms. Destinee Taylor will also address us on the issues facing our young people and the struggle for what we have in order for us to. Once again, we are grateful for your support and attendance as you will hear and appreciate firsthand the issues facing the young and be involved in the process of identifying, assessing, and resolving issues. Additionally, we wish to thank our sponsors for your healthcare services. We look forward to your continued support. We will not from another Generation Next.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for going up to our first generation. As you stated, we hope that this is the first of many to come. To consider this, young people, you are the youth of today, leaders of tomorrow. You are the generation next. We are more than capable of becoming and beginning a new era of excellence, strength, and ability to march and provide our country with what they truly deserve, that of Bermuda. Generation Next was birthed a few months ago as a result of assessing the thoughts of various young people in the next election about what they would do in the next election, whether or not they would vote. We got some intellectual and articulate responses that are indicative to me of the youth are well aware of racial and economic divides within our community. The urgent need for adopting physical investing in young people and young Bermudians is urgent. I said it then, and I will say it again. The government and opposition alike take notice that young Bermudians are paying attention. On the other hand, we found that there are those young people who did not care to, who did not see the importance of it. They felt that it did not affect them. Although many may believe, it is the reality that this is how people feel. We have talked with these young people and asked these individuals to understand that their voice truly does matter and vote counts. It is incumbent upon anyone when discussing the youth vote and encouraging young people to get involved, to outline and discuss some of Bermuda's voting history. My friend will do this evening. History is abundantly clear when it shows that the powers that be wanted to protect the elitist status quo of restricting the opportunities of a large percentage of Bermudians. In previous years, you had to be a part of a certain economic class, a certain racial class in order to vote. It is incumbent upon us to look back at the struggles that our ancestors endured, those who have paved the way for us to follow today. They have laid the foundation upon which we intend to build. A plethora of different strands were interwoven into the political, economic, and social fabric of Bermuda in the first half of the 20th century. These included the women's suffrage movement, the universal adult suffrage movement, and the prolonged quest for racial and economic. Inextricably linked to the success in achieving some of those objectives was the need for progressive legislation to stop the long-standing struggle and discriminatory convention of and opportunities for a large percentage of Bermudians. Researching and learning about the history of our island's electoral system, the legislature, and the struggle on our behalf has been a humbling and enlightening journey for all of the young people involved. We have individuals like Dr. E.F Gordon, Dr. Hilda Aiken, and Ms. Edna Watson to thank for their invaluable contributions in the fight for voting equality. Just a few months ago, Jeanette started a youth vote We are pleased to report that to date, we have assisted over 5 young men and women to register to vote or change the requisite details in order for them to be allowed to vote. We look forward to continuing this task of increasing the electorate and widening participation. Generation Next continues to hand out material regarding Bermuda's electoral system and our voting history. This literature includes former legislator or clerk to the registrar, Mr. James E. Smith. We have identified some other matters concerning our young Bermudians that we have undertaken to address over the next few months. We propose that individuals, when they turn 18 years of age, ought to automatically register to vote. We know that the information is readily available, as it has been in the past, when individuals were conscripted for service. And the starting point, to my mind, to our mind here at Generation Next, is why not? Why should we not automatically be registered to vote? Why should we support an initiative that will see greater participation of young people in the electoral process? I have yet been met with a cogent response to these questions. The proposition has been met with a great deal of support. We in Generation Next don't believe in meeting just to meet or talking just to talk. We have ideas, we discuss their merit and how to proceed, and then we act. We are extremely pleased to report that we have drafted a bill proposed as the Parliamentary Election Amendment Act No. 3, 2016. This bill to the Attorney General's chambers by the Premier for feedback. We are pleased to indicate that we met the vote in opposition and have been in constant communication with the Premier, and it is our aim to have this bill tabled in the House of Assembly within the coming weeks. This act proposes automatic voters registration for young people when they turn 18 years of age. We are also working on a system that will provide for absentee voting for students. The starting issue with this is why not? Young people are going abroad to pursue further education, to equip them with the educational qualifications, skills, and knowledge, with a view to returning to their island, to their country, to give back. Why should these individuals be prevented from exercising their right to vote simply because they are pursuing further education and cannot afford to return home simply for an election? A system providing for absentee voting can be in place in time for the next election. If we can avoid the seemingly irresistible attraction that is far too common with issues of grave importance, politics with the issue. If an idea is a good idea, and it can be done, these are the words of my friend next to me, Mr. John Barritt. He spoke these words a few years ago when talking on the issue of automatic or absentee voting for students. The time is clearly, all that is required is the will. The next issue that we wish to address is the implementation of A-levels, the IB program, and Caribbean exams in our public education system. Far too often, young people go through 4 years of high school only to graduate and be told by a university in the United Kingdom, for instance, that they don't have the requisite qualifications to enter their first year. They are informed that a foundation year is required. During that foundation year, there is nothing substantive that is learned by our students, but there is an additional course. For a wealthy and developed country like our island home, Bermuda, this is unacceptable and, quite frankly, embarrassing. Generation Next have asked ourselves, how do we go about changing that? Last week, we met with the Minister of Education, the Honorable. The Minister sends his apologies this evening as he was unable to make it as he's off Ireland. We talked about the lack of IB, A-levels, and the Caribbean exams that were available to students in the public education system. We discussed how we can move forward to start the process of implementing some of these ideas into our education system. I have also had the privilege of discussing this matter with an individual who has a wealth of knowledge on the topic, Mr. Scott Pearman. Mr. Pearman will expand upon this point at a later stage of this evening's meeting. We know that there has been communication feasibility of introducing some of these programs locally. Generation Next is committed to holding the government and opposition accountable for ensuring with addressing some of the fundamental barriers preventing the implementation of such programs in our local system. One of the significant challenges is funding for teacher training student exams, and we here at Generation Next are committed to ensuring that the appropriate funding is backed by our government, the people's government. After all, no matter who is the government, it should be their priority that the young people of this country have the requisite skills and qualifications to allow them to fulfill their true potential. In the coming weeks and months, we will be addressing these matters and a number of other matters that are affecting our young people. Matters, in our view, transcend political loyalties and pettiness. They go to the heart of what our country should stand for, the young people, because they are the future. I must laud the tireless commitment and hard work of the young people involved in this initiative. Their dedication and genuine desire to educate, involve, and motivate has been truly inspiring. Without the support, encouragement, and involvement of these young people, this initiative could and would not be a success. Bermuda, rest assured that there are young people ready, eager, of leading the charge, leading Bermuda into a future filled with promise and prosperity. It has been truly amazing to see a larger presence of vocalizing their concerns and input regarding the direction of this country. As a young person growing up in Bermuda, it is imperative to know that our representatives are making decisions that will pave the way for a better Bermuda. Bermuda's young people should realize that they can make a difference and they will be the difference. The country has a plethora of young people full of talent, potential, and intellectual brilliance. With your input, effort, and combined support, there is nothing to stop you from achieving great things on behalf of your country. Young people, you are the youth of today, of tomorrow. Thank you.
Good evening. It is my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker for this evening. The Honorable John Barritt is a consulting attorney with MJM Limited and a former member of the Bermuda Parliament. Mr. Barritt, MJM Limited, from his employment from the law firm Appleby, Spurring, and Kipp, where he had a varied practice in litigation, conveyancing, and trust. Mr. Barritt appeared before the courts of Bermuda. He is a Justice of Peace, a notary public, and a commissioner of oaths. Mr. Barritt served as the elected member of the House of Parliament, the House of Assembly from 1993 until his retirement, or until he stepped on in September 2011. In several different capacities during his tenure, he served from government whip to a cabinet minister to the opposition whip to the opposition house leader, and upon his retirement, he served as the opposition leader. Mr. Barritt holds a degree from Trent University in Ontario, a bachelor's of journalism degree from Carleton University in Ontario, and a from the University of California in Alberta. Mr. Barritt was called to the bar of Providence of Alberta and to the bar of the Bay. Mr. Barritt, Mr. Barritt's years of community involvement is long, and he has served as the chairman of the Bermuda Housing Trust for Cities. Great honor and pleasure that I invite Mr. Barritt to speak with you at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Russell. It's great to say those things. I think I'm looking over at Eron because I think he told me that the Attorney General who arrived is here this evening. and Eron wanted to present him with the draft bill. Eron, do I have that right? And you'd like to do that before I begin, because the Attorney General has to leave at a certain point. I'm happy to step down for a moment to allow that to happen.
Thank you very much, Mr. I'm going to hand to the Attorney General, the Honorable Trevor Moniz, JP, MP. Generation X's proposed election, parliamentary election amendment number 3 Act 2016. Now, Generation X has indicated before, in constant communication with the Premier, who has indicated that this proposed bill is before the Attorney General's chambers for review and consultation, and it is our hope that within the coming weeks this bill will be taken before the Assembly. I'm going to hand this bill to the Attorney General.
Greetings, good evening to all. And it's a pleasure for me to receive this proposed bill this evening. The government is looking at reforming the Parliamentary Election Act. We don't know how close we are at this point, but reform our review of that legislation, and we commit to speak with the group, and Eron this further as we proceed, so we get a better position, better understanding of the challenges that are faced with respect to the workings of the Parliament and some of the possible suggestions. And also, I'd like to give kudos to my friend John Barritt, who's also done considerable reviews in his
Eating is not lost on me, as I have reached that magic age of 65. I try not to think about it, I just try to move on. And that's the advice I leave with you tonight when you reach that magic age. The other thing that I think about this evening, when I was asked to speak on the vote and the importance of the vote and some of the history of the vote in Bermuda, the irony of that is not lost on the eye. Why do I say that? Is because Bermuda's history is one, we need to state this up front, of where people who looked like me did all they could to make it difficult for voting for people who don't look like me. And I'm sure you understand what I'm saying. And, you know, whether it was, in the first instance, denying black Bermudians the vote, or later abridging that vote, or making it difficult to vote, or devaluing the vote. That has been our history up to a certain point. Indeed, some people would argue that is still the case today. I say that because it's important, I think, to put it on the table right from the outset. And here I am, speaking in the Dr. E.F Gordon Hall. That is ironic too. Perhaps that's a mark of how far we have come as a community, but I'll let you decide after I've finished speaking. I don't want to be judged what I have to say. I've made some notes here, and the thing, I don't mean to be patronizing when I make those opening remarks either. I'm trying to be upfront about the issue of race and the role that race plays in this community. Whether it be in voting or any other matter. It's always a feature and a factor, not to be overlooked, not to be ignored, and never to be underestimated. And it's important to acknowledge that and to let people know that you are attuned to our history. You know, the weight of Bermuda's history is a reflection of what we are as a community. And I also understand and appreciate that weight is not evenly distributed. That has to be acknowledged as well. And one weighs it up and weighs it in when you look at things like the vote in Bermuda and what we're going to do to improve voting in Bermuda and participation in politics in Bermuda. There's that famous saying, those who don't learn from history are condemned to repeat the same mistakes. And to my mind, they're silly, stupid mistakes because the history is there right in our faces. We live it every day. And collaboration and cooperation between political parties, between races, between economic divisions, ought ought to be in Bermuda always the first option. This is something I've long been an advocate of. The reviews that I do, studies of the Parliamentary Election Act, of which the Attorney General for making that comment, which I've made a passion of mine, or in governance generally here in Bermuda. Collaboration and cooperation ought to be a first option as to how we govern ourselves and how we allow ourselves to be governed. And the most recent example I can think of, it's an obvious example, where this was thrown up, was the recent pathways to status and the immigration controversy that emerged over that. And look where we are now as to where we should have been to start with, in my view. And I said so very early on. Now, collaboration and cooperation, I want to say, is a feature of our Bermuda Constitution order. I don't call it our Constitution because it is a Constitution order. It is an instrument of UK legislation. Something I was learned on by the late Dame Lewis Brown Evans, who used to always draw me up on that. Stop referring to it as our Constitution. We're not independent. That is, in fact, an act. And where is it in our Constitution that we see collaboration and cooperation a feature? It comes under that section which deals with the franchise. I'm talking now about the Boundaries Commission. We have a Boundaries Commission which is to review on a regular basis our boundaries so that the constituencies can be as equal as possible in numbers. And that commission is made up of what? 2 members of the government, 2 members of the opposition, and 2 independents. The most important issue there is, regardless of what happened in the last 4 boundaries commissioners appointed, each side has equal numbers, equal weight, and equal say. As it so happens, the independent members, both of whom are traditionally have been appointed from outside the community, one with a legal background and one with a background that lends itself, they hold the balance of power, yes. But the point I'm trying to make is that both sides, both political parties, have equal representation and are on equal footing. There is a lot to be said for that in a community of our size, in any community, particularly a community with our history, so that people are required as a first option to talk with one another and to talk things through. Now, I had the honor and the privilege of being on the Boundaries Commission that followed a major step in this country, constitutional step that was taken in this country by the Progressive Labour Party upon its election to govern for the first time in 1998. And that was what? To change from dual seat constituencies, where constituencies are confined by parish boundaries, and to change to constituencies and to decide what number would best be suitable and appropriate for Bermuda. I was appointed as one of the 2 members of the opposition, along with Dame Aminah Gordon. She was a Dame, but the late Dame Lois Brown Evans and the late Eugene Cox, father. And there were 2 independents. And we persevered. That's not to say we didn't have our arguments going back and forth, but we were able at the end of the day to come to a unanimous conclusion on the number of seats, 36, which is what we had, which was a reduction from 40 as it was dating back to 1968, and with the assistance of a computer, which threw out possibilities going from east to west and then west to east, we were able to on the constituency boundaries for those 30. All of that was done even though there were some reservations about moving in this direction on behalf of my party, and the Progressive Labour Party wanted to move ahead as possible. We were both required, indeed you could say forced, under the Bermuda Constitution order to work through that together, and work through it together we did. Aside, I can't speak for the Progressive Labour Party, whether all of the Progressive Labour Party was happy at that time. My group, then the United Bermuda Party, could live with the result. We worked through it, and we said the configuration for Bermuda and Bermuda's interests. And it worked. And that sort of model of parties working together is one that I think ought to be replicated on the Hill. I call it on the Hill, Mr. Editor, which is where the House of Assembly sits, on the Hill. Part of our parliament, well, we're not really a parliament, we're a legislature, includes the Senate, which normally sits, the upper house sits down the hill, and the lower house sits up the hill. But in any event, right now they're sitting up on the hill too, because the building down there is being renovated. But I'm distracted. But that's the point I want to underscore when it comes to, I think there's an indication there, a key there, as to how we might progress better of the committee system. You don't need a whole host of committees, but enough where backbenchers can get stuck in and have equal voice and equal opportunity to shine as those who are picked for the cabinet. Now, have we arrived at where we want to be in terms of single seats, 36 seats, and one man, one vote of equal value? Because that was what the objective was when the Progressive Labor Party moved us in that direction. One man, one vote of equal value. And one of the things we wrestle with, and we put race on the table again, 36 seats were decided upon, and any other greater or lesser configuration, the demographics of the historical settling of Bermuda and in different parishes always been that some appear to be, some would be black, working class in Pembroke, we're going to vote PLP. Those in some of the other areas, like Paget, into Devonshire, and Smiths, where there were stronger white populations had settled, more affluent as well, that they would be a base for the United Bermuda Party. Or if you like, now the One Bermuda Alliance, or if you like, for labor and for business-oriented party. And that's something we're going to always face until people start moving around. But within 20 square miles, there's limited space, there's limited opportunity. Again, to me, that under committee level, there be committees where there be equal representation, so people have a voice regardless of who's in government, regardless of who's in opposition. And that will change the culture of Bermuda, and possibly even the way we conduct our politics, to which Mr. Hill has made reference. And have we arrived with respect to the Election Act? I brought a copy with me. I don't know how many of you are familiar with it, but it's a 1978 piece of legislation. It has been amended 12 times since, which included, after the Progressive Labor Party, let me back up. In 1978, when this legislation was introduced on the United Bermuda Party, it actually provided for a continuous registry. That is, not one where there would be an annual registration. But that was changed to annual registration 6 months after the Act's introduction. And there were people at the time outraged at this move because they felt that annual registration would encourage disenfranchisement, where people wouldn't register, particularly when an election had just called, and they wouldn't be motivated. And if you could only register in the month of February, which I believe it was, and an election was called in November, it was hard lines. You were out of luck. You should have registered in February. Well, the Progressive Labor Party changed that after they came in 1998. It was one of the promises that they made in their election platform, in their manifesto, and they carried through with it, which was to say we're going to abolish annual registration. Now registration would be something you could do year-round, and indeed, not right up to the date of the election, but around the time the writ was issued, if people still hadn't, they still, I think, under the Act, have a week to 10 days to register for that election. Which encourages, which motivates, which gets people involved, which doesn't give them the right to vote. They have to exercise it, but they're on the register and they have the right to vote. It comes with it to be visited by every politician who vote. And that happens. my view, and I've made representations on this, is when that annual registration was done away with, and we went back to what I call a rolling register or continuous register, it was done by way of amendment to the act. So you are now putting something in an act which had previously been designed and amended for annual registration. And where did that fall down? It fell down in this way. The act, and it currently exists, is this romantic political notion that there will be scrutineers, I think 2 from every party in every constituency, who will go out on a regular basis and monitor the constituency and know who is and is not living there, is and is not properly registered, and make those submissions to the parliamentary registrar, who in turn will then notify people, and they will come in and correct their addresses or not, as the case may be. It is not compulsory. And part of the problem is, when you previously had annexation, the legislation was not particularly concerned with whether people or not, because they reckon if you're registering every February, you'll only register where you're moved. It will only be in 12 months if you've moved. So whether people had moved and were living and voting in the constituency in which they no longer live. And you might think that there's something wrong with that. On the face of it, you might say, well, what's the problem? I lived in Hamilton Parish, one of the Hamilton constituencies, but I haven't changed my registration. What's the problem? What's the difficulty of the next election in Hamilton? Well, it's not so much the difficulty, it's this. It's been a lot more active than it has been in previous times, as people have gone out visiting constituencies to make sure that people are registered and that they're registered in the right constituency. That's the kind of thing that needs to be done. You can't necessarily leave it to the political parties, as I say, for obvious reasons, because some votes are more valuable to them in one constituency than it is in another. And you've got to give the parliamentary registrar the powers to address this in a meaningful way. The other thing that I've long been a proponent of is the absentee ballot. And let me just say that I did notice in the throne speech, it was a campaign promise of the One Bermuda Alliance when they ran in 2012 in that election. And I did notice that it has been mentioned in the throne speech as a piece of legislation that will be presented in the forthcoming legislation. I heard the Attorney General say that they're working on amendments to the Parliamentary Election Act. I've got to think that that's one of them. And time is running out before this session ends. It usually goes down at the end of July. And one normally leaves it for 2 weeks before it's voted upon. Hearing no objection, no clarification, I'm assuming that that is going to be the case. But one thing that caused me to step back and maybe caused a pause was this. The absentee ballot is going to be limited to students at recognized educational institutions. And I have to say, well, why the proviso? What's intended there? What's really at play there? And I hope it's dropped, because that sounds like giving it. But even more than that, stay with me on this point. If someone is properly registered to vote and hasn't been challenged and has stood any test where there has been a challenge, but is living off Bermuda, whether they be a student or working for a period of time, why should they be denied an absentee ballot? Why should anybody who's legitimately on the register for a period of time be denied the right to vote? It shouldn't just be limited to students. If you're running your register correctly, it should not be limited just to students, because you have to assume, as we all do, that anybody who's on that register is properly registered and entitled to vote. Now, I know there are people who move on, and the last thing they do, in fact, it's not even the last thing they do, they never do, is phone the registrar and say, I'm leaving the island, take me off the list. It doesn't happen. But that's where an active parliamentary registrar's office and the scrutineers are meant to work and to present the information to the parliamentary registrar to make people do more for this. So I'm talking about people who still have a real connection to Bermuda, not people who've left the island. And which brings me also to the advance poll. It previously used to be that there was one day that people could vote if they're going to happen to be away on the date of an election. One day. And it was usually, I think, a week before the vote. One day. Well, most people had their holidays over a period of time. 2 weeks is not unusual. In that case, you might miss the vote completely. And that, in my humble view, is wrong as well. Absolutely, totally. What's happened since is, I can't remember which government it was done, the advance poll has been extended to 3 days. I have to say, big deal. 3 days really doesn't address the end of this point. If someone is properly registered and is not here on the day of the election, on the day of the vote, they should be able to exercise their vote through an absentee ballot. That's the way we deal with that. Advance polls can become a thing of the past, as plain as they are, because it gives politicians, which I was one once, to greet voters before they vote, like they do in constituencies. But the absentee ballot, and look, here's the thing as well. With an absentee ballot, we're not discovering plutonium, real or political. It's not reinventing the wheel. It is done in other modern jurisdictions. And it's time we caught up and kept pace with what's being done in other jurisdictions. And the other thing that I think we need to face up, and this is one of the wonderful things that's happening with technology. Technology is going to make possible that our forefathers never dreamed of. I understand completely programs and computer programs, but I know that we are moving in the direction where voting can be conducted online and it can be done in a secure way. For those of us who didn't grow up and aren't growing up with Blackberries, iPhones, and iPads, it may seem alien, and it just online banking still worries the heck out of me. If someone's going to hack in and get what I have, and indeed some people have on my MasterCard at one of the banks. Firecrackers in Hong Kong to the tune of $10,000. But in any event, there are people who are very good at creating secure programs that will allow us to have, and in this direction. We need to move in this direction. And here's the thing. I want to pause here and make another commercial for collaboration and cooperation. The matter of elections, Parliamentary Election Act, whether many of you know this or not, was the subject of a select committee of the House of Assembly, which was established back in September 2013 on a motion by opposition member Walton Brown. And I'll pause here to acknowledge he's in the audience tonight, along with his colleague Kim Wilson, Leah Scott from the OBA, and David Silver from the Progressive Labor Party. And on that joint select committee, it was spurred primarily by this. There was a concern that certain parliamentarians, two in particular on the bench of the One Bermuda Alliance, had not complied with the requirements of contact with government. And there was a great deal of argument about how one in that section in terms of what you have to do as a candidate in a parliamentary election. And it's really important to get it right and do it right, because you can be disqualified. You can lose your seat if you haven't properly disclosed government contract. And that spurred this committee into action. Quite rightly too, in my view, needed to be dealt with. And it still needs to be dealt with, because one of their recommendations was that on any view of the Parliamentary Election Act, that needs to be cleaned up and clear so that people will know what's required of them, precisely what's required of them, when they put their names forward as an election candidate. Serious business. But that wasn't, there was a, incidentally, Mr. Brown can speak to this a lot better than I can, they managed to get a QC's opinion who underscored the point that there was concerned that the law had not been applied with, that the law had not been interpreted correctly. But Mr. Brown and his colleague, I'm not sure who was on that committee, but that committee, it usually numbers 5, and it reflects the balance of power in the House. There were 3 government members and 2 opposition members. And they filed a minority report saying why they disagreed. But here's the thing. On that committee, the 5 people who sat on there, 2 from the opposition and 3 from the government party, were able to agree on some recommendation. They were able to agree on some. One of which I thought was very, very important, notwithstanding the fact that I appeared before the committee and argued for it. It was this, that there ought to be, under our Parliamentary Election Act, an an independent body to deal with what they described as a wide range of matters raised by committee that they were unable to explore in detail because they reported 6 months, I think, which is a bit of a record time for a select committee. And what were some of those matters that they said could be addressed? Absentee, maintaining the voting register, adjudicating disputes among candidates and political parties, and electronic voting. They thought it would be the ideal vehicle for addressing these matters. And particularly when elections are called to deal with matters that are contested between political parties. And there always are matters when it comes to elections. And I have to say that as far as I'm aware, other than I heard the Attorney General Parliamentary Election Act revisions are being worked upon, heard nothing from these recommendations. That one in particular, which was unanimously agreed upon by members of a select division of the House, which in my view points the way to which the way in which we should proceed in addressing some of these matters, some of these matters to move us forward into an age where votes count. And I have to say, Mr. Light, and he and I have conversations, don't mean terribly when I say that. He knows my interest in this area, and I'm aware of his. He's talking now about the need for automatic registration, and that's part of the bill that he's presented to the Attorney General this evening. And Mr. Hill is quite right. I made a note of this myself. If we could find it within ourselves before the invention of the BlackBerry, iPad, and laptops, find a way to identify people who had reached the age of 18 for the purposes of being conscripted into the regiment, we can surely today find an even easier way to identify those who turn 18 to make sure that they are registered. The only question will be where they're living. But we can move in that direction. And indeed, we ought to move in that direction because the vote is important in politics, wherever you are, not just Bermuda. It's important. In Bermuda, believe me, your vote carries a lot more weight, particularly in some constituencies, where the balance flows election to election. But that select committee pointed the way in 2 respects. One, it proved its success in coming up with recommendations that ought, in my view, to have been taken seriously and adopted. And they reported in February 14, and here we are, 2, and we're still waiting. And I'll be interested to see if they get acted upon. Because if you want to encourage people to the direction of collaboration and cooperation and working together, the reward, the motivation, is acting upon what they say, is adopting what they have to say. And if not, saying, why not? Modifying it in a way that you think works better. But that's the way to go. And they also pointed to that independent electoral commission, which I think is also long overdue. Getting into issues like the political broadcasting direction, there's always some argument over that. And I suspect, as the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association has recommended, that parties start dealing with the issue of campaign finance and the reporting of finances and how much money. All of that, are hallmarks of a modern jurisdiction. We like to pride ourselves on being that. that, we're capable of doing that.
By the society around them is that they are not needed. That society will run itself quite nicely until they, at some distant point in the future, will take over the reins. Yet, the fact that society does not run itself nicely, because the rest of us need energy, brain, imagination, and talent that young people can bring to bear down on our difficulties. For society to attempt to solve its desperate problem, participation of even very young people is imbecile. Alvin Toffler. That is a powerful quote that can be interpreted in one simple way. In order for society to function, it needs contribution from young people. Dr. Paulu Camphor once said, "Whatever you have learned does not belong to you. You have to share it and give it back." Today, as a young person, I just want to talk about the important role Dr. Roosevelt Brown played in voting history in Bermuda and the legacy he left fighting for our rights in Bermuda. Just to take you back a bit to analyze the political landscape in Bermuda in regards to voting, in the 1960s, one had to first be of voting age, which was 25, including the fact that one had to be in possession of land valued at 60 pounds. Also, if a landowner owned property in other parishes, he can vote in those other parishes as well, known as plural voting. Now see, the property assessors would deliberately undervalue Black Bermudians' property, which in result denied the right to vote. So Paulu, Bruce, Dr. Brown, whatever you want to call him, observed all of this in his home, and just like we formed Generation Next, the Committee for Universal Adult Suffrage was formed. He needed to get his message island-wide in order to bring about the change he wanted to see. So he reached out to his classmates from Howard Academy, the Berkeley Institute, and other members of society. Furthermore, once this committee was formed, he went around having debates, meetings, spreading his messages in lodges, football games, barbershops, and the like. After Paulu's campaigning and pressure on the members of colonial parliament, the property vote was removed in 1963, and at the age of 25, you were able to vote owning property or not. In 1966, the plus vote was eliminated, and the franchise was extended, giving every Bermudian aged 21 and over the right to vote. The historic election of May 22nd, 1968 was the first to be held within the 21 and older vote, first to be held without the party vote, and first to be held under the banner of party politics. It wasn't until 1989 that the voting age was lowered to 18, which came on January 1st, 1990. Sharing all of this to say, the franchise or the vote is something that was not given to us as young people. It was fought for and earned. So take young people and come out in the numbers to vote, whether at the referendum or the next election or by-election. Respect the franchise, let your vote count, because believe it or not, every vote counts. I close with this quote by Malcolm X. "The young people are the ones who most quickly identify with the struggle and the necessity to eliminate the evil conditions that exist." Thank you.
Good evening. Before I start my panel discussion, I would like to tell you a little bit about me. My name is Aminah Simmons and I am 17 years old. I am a part of my high school student government association where I currently serve, or I used to serve because I graduated in 6 days. I was a member of the youth parliament where I served as clerk for a while. I'm a prefect, I am the lead violinist for Bermuda Youth Orchestra and my school's orchestra. I am heavily involved in my church. I'm a mentor for girls younger than me that need guidance. I am a member of St. James Auditorium, student tag team, and a member of Generation X. I was also a dual enrollment student and a member of the County Striping Program known as 2. I believe that I am an advocate for my peers and I believe in getting my voice heard. I will be graduating in from Cedar Ridge in 6 days and I could not be more excited about it. Now that you know a little bit about me, I know why what I am about to talk about is so important to me. A wise person once said, "Youth are not the problem, they are the solution. Nothing about us without us is for us." I believe that in order to confront issues that the youth have today, you must first include the youth. Make us feel like we are a part of the important decisions being made that will directly affect us. Too often, I hear girls talking about how the youth don't do anything or are uninterested. I sometimes have to ask the question, what are we doing to change that? What are we doing to make sure the youth feel like they have a voice that matters? Because a lot of times, that sense doesn't make saying anything. They wouldn't care anyway. This brings me to the topic of what Generation X has built its foundation on, which is the youth getting registered to vote. 6 out of 10 people ages from told me that they are not registered to vote. When I asked why, they told me that they believe it makes no sense for them to vote. That even if they do vote, their vote wouldn't matter. I was both shocked and saddened at the mindset of the young people today, where their most powerful weapon doesn't even matter. Your vote is your voice. Voting is an opportunity to be heard. If you do not vote, others will make the decision for you. You will think that you could have been that one vote that mattered. It is a fact that the millennial generation makes up a big part of the electorate. When I think about voting, it excites me. Knowing that I can be a part of something that will cause change or better the country makes me feel like my vote has so much power. Knowing that my ancestors and your ancestors to get this right makes it even more rewarding and precious. How can you complain about something that is taking place in the community, but they seem to decide to do? By voting, you are not only doing your part to influence the present and future. Although youth voting is a very hot topic in our generation, it would be remiss of me if I didn't mention some of the other issues and concerns of the youth today. The most important issue right now is public school education. Most of all the young people that I talk to say they don't feel as if public education is a priority in the government. And before I state some of the bullet points I have for all the issues of education, I wanted to make it known that I actually went out and talked to my youth, to my peers, so this is actually bullet points from them, this is not all me speaking. So, yeah. The first issue is that there are a lack of resources in the schools. Some schools can't afford paper. The grading criteria puts the student at a disadvantage. Why are there so many exams? Why are the exams where so much about grade? And I actually went deep and gave me a quote by John. It says, "The anxiety children feel being tested, their fear of failure, punishment, and pain severely reduces their ability both to perceive and to remember, and drives them away from the material being studied into strategies for fooling teachers into thinking they know what they really don't know." The third bullet point, there is little to no acknowledgement for those who don't do so well, who are not praised for doing things they did well in, but only got shunned upon because they keep up a certain level of excellence academically, even though they are only failing one class. The quality of the buildings are not up to par. Why should we have to go to school with milk, frogs, and rats? Health and safety are just as important as getting an education. We are being denied education that will prepare us to compete in the same job market as our peers. We need more college prep. When we go to university, we feel unprepared and behind. Bermuda needs to have a 4-year college program. Why do we have to look abroad for a bachelor's degree but need a job to get one? To get a job. If an 18-year-old does not fit into BDA college and can't get a job, what are their health insurance options? I agree that without the voice of the students, schools serve no purpose. They are nothing but institutions where adults run to live in order to continue this tradition of the cycle. We have master's degrees, and we know what's best for you, so just shut up and deal with it. This brings me to another concern, which is youth unemployment. Not much jobs are available during the summertime. Packing groceries has now become something that the grandfolk do because of the state of the job market. Where is the entry-level job market for 14 to 17-year-olds? We have an issue with the youth breaking into shops and houses, but they can't. Not that it is right, but they do what they need to do in order to survive. Youth find it hard to be productive, and having a job or to keep them occupied is not helping. Not having a job or resources to keep them occupied is not helping. We will be even a pension when it's time. I was surprised at that one because I didn't even know my parents were thinking that far about pensions. So it really opened my eyes that the youth are really paying attention, they really care about what's going on. The last issue that I have is misuse and the use of drugs. Majority of youth doing drugs today are underage. Where is the example or standard that are supposed to set for the generations under us? What happens when they grow up thinking that drinking is a new thing? There needs to be limitations on what the youth can do. Why is it so easy for an underage child to get into a bar and drink? Again, I ask, where's the standard? And the last bullet point is, for some reason, our children cannot handle being we have to always be doing something, even if something is illegal or could put us in danger. No. To tackle all of the issues that I stated above, the community needs to come together and be committed and consistent, because not only the government can help with these things, but the people as well. I would like to end with a quote by Henry Ford that says, "Coming together is a beginning, doing together is progress, working together is success." I hope you understand more now what the youth go through and how much they care. Thanks.
I'd like to thank those young ladies for those wonderful presentations. Certainly inspiring to see our young people take such care and interest in the future of our country. At this juncture, I'd like to invite Mr. Bierman to address you on the issue of the implementation of the exams that I had talked about. Now, before he makes his way to the podium, we had talked about the lack of IB programs, the lack of A-levels in our public education system. Now, I've talked with Mr. Bierman, knowledge on these topics, who has made an approach to the CXC board, and he'll tell you a little bit more about it. Struggles that our young people face in our jurisdiction is that we go 4 years of public education system, and then you apply, let's say, to the United Kingdom, and well, look, you have to do a foundation degree. Now, young people find themselves in the economic state that Bermuda can afford to go away to school. Now you're telling us that we have to do it to qualify into the door. Now that's a struggle that you don't face in wealthy countries like you shouldn't face rather, in developed and wealthy countries like our Bermuda. With the Minister of Education, we've talked about it, and he's agreed to continue to meet with Generation Next as we look to move forward to getting these processes implemented in our public education system, so that our young people can progress straight into the university, so that they can get. And I think Aminah brought up a great point, which is the fact that you're required to have a bachelor's degree and 5 years experience before you get an entry-level position. But you cannot afford to go away to school, so what are options? At this juncture, I'd like to invite Mr. Bierman to come and address you briefly on that topic.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the invite. Protocol having been established. This evening, I'm here on behalf of the Berkeley Board of Governors, on behalf of Chairman Mr. Craig Bridgewater. We're actually opening a new library this evening, so could not be here today. I'm sorry, not open, but renaming. I actually sit as chair of the Performance Committee on the Berkeley Board, and that is a committee that is set up specifically to look at academic performance and excellence within our school. And very pleased to say that one reason why I'm here today is because of a video that Mr. Hill, Mr. Parent Chief, I believe Ms. Taylor handed did about 2 or 3 years ago. It's still on YouTube, so you can look it up. But essentially what they did, what the youth will say, they put the board as well as the Ministry of Education on blast. And what they covered in this video was that, thanks. Yeah, that's a dangerous spot. That's fine. I'll be gentle. That the top students were leaving the school underqualified to gain direct entry into competitive universities, okay, particularly in the UK, and they were having to do foundation years. At that point, we had an option. We could have gotten our feelings hurt and been insulted, or we could take core of their message and as a board do something about it. And that we decided to do. It was from that action I called the Hill last night when I saw the topics and just reminded them that Generation Next has already gotten us a whole win under their belt. Okay, so first of all, thank you for helping those coming behind you. The Barclay realized as we were going through our strategic planning process that we needed a solution for our academic high performers to ensure they were gaining direct entry, preferably advanced standing in competitive and highly competitive universities. As well as we wanted to ensure that all of our students were laying their rightful claim to the competitive scholarships that were here on island. And we realized there was something in there. And so we decided to focus on introducing a suite of advanced programs. And when we did that, we went in with whether it be IB, Cambridge A-levels, the American College Board APs, or CAPES, which are the Caribbean Advanced Placement Exams. And of course, we also were working with the Bermuda College and the Ministry of Education with respect to implementing Bermuda College dual enrollment program, which has been successfully for a few years. As we move through the options, we recognize that the private schools had some excellent programs for IB, and in the economic times, it was that perhaps students that were interested in IB, that we work and do affiliations, so that option could potentially still be on the table. Cambridge, the very natural fit for the community, because we were already on a Cambridge curriculum. But when students to the Cambridge A-levels, it's done in 2 parts, and there was some loss of efficiency with respect to students, with respect to cost and the length of time that they have to take to go through it, as opposed to the College Board APs. The College Board APs were more cost effective for a public school system. Students could do the program by challenging the exam or doing one or a course over 1 or 2 years. As well as the APs are highly recognized, obviously in the United States, certainly in Canada, as well as the UK. So it ticked a lot of boxes. And we were able to launch the AP program last September. It required the school sending teachers for specialized training, and we introduced a cohort of 3 or 4 programs last September. We had 2 students enrolled in September. 29 students took their exams this past month, and we're waiting for the exam results July. Okay? This coming year, school year, we're looking to roll out our additional programs, and our principal will be making another in the foreseeable future. You may recall that around prize giving, the school made an announcement that we introduced our honors program and an advanced honors program. And one of the things we have been struggling with as a school since it went to the new comprehensive format is everybody used to talk about the old Bartley versus the new Bartley. I happen to know that those of you that graduated perhaps in the late 80s and the early 90s from the Bartley, you might have skated by a little bit because the graduation requirements were 5 GCEs or a combination of 5 GCEs. Well, the students who to become eligible for the honor program, you must get 5 international exams to be eligible, okay? 5 of the ICGCEs. To qualify for the advanced honors program, you must pass at least 2 of your APs or do from the Bermuda College. And so we want to ensure that students they have options not only at the ICGCSE level, but also going up to the advanced places. The other of programs we're looking at is the Caribbean advanced placements. We have not adopted any of their programming, but what is attractive is they have so 20% of the actual degree of the coursework is done within your own school system. So for instance, if you're doing the biology CAPE, you can begin to study Bermuda Cowhouse, which won't be on the curriculum. But then when you go to, that could be part of your undergraduate and perhaps even your master's and even potentially your doctoral thesis. The CAPES are also RACS, Canada and the UK, and it provides another alternative to the College Board APs, which are for students who may wish to do law, tourism, or other programs that are not traditionally available through the American program. So we're acting those programs at this point in time. Where the school knows it's going to run into challenges is, of course, with the funding. At this point in time, we've had to fund the training of teachers, as well as the students have to pay for the exams. So part of the business cases that we're having to do at this point in time is to get additional funding support, but the return on the investment will be substantial. For several $1,000s, and we're not talking $100,000, we can ensure that those students who pass, their parents, literally tens of thousands of dollars per student. If you think that every credit is worth at least $1,000, and they can pass 6 credits through an exam, that could knock off a quarter semester or even a half semester first year. And you're talking about university costing somewhere around $40,000 per annum. That could be $20,000 saved, investing in the teachers as well as the students up front. So, we'll be very happy to share with the ministry and others what cost implications are, but when you think that we have 29 students right now who could potentially save half a year's worth of tuition, I think, and that money stays here in Bermuda, there's tremendous upside. So thank you for inviting us to speak today. Please keep up.
I definitely appreciate that, and I'm sure you all do as well. At this juncture, we're going to open the floor if you have any questions for our panelists. I would like to acknowledge the presence of MP Dennis Lister. Thank you for coming on. I that was acknowledged previously, but we'd like to acknowledge that he is present. At this juncture, I'd also like to reiterate our thanks to our sponsors, Ireland Construction and Bermuda Healthcare. I see my brother and sister Joanne and Zane De Silva in the back there. Dr. E.F Brown and his wife send their apologies for being unable to make it this evening. I'd like to, though I know that the young people and Mr. Barritt are eager to answer questions. I know Mr. Barritt especially is eager to answer some of the questions for his speech. As he said, it was quite ironic for some of the topics that he spoke on this evening, that we are present in the Bermuda Industrial Union, and he's speaking on the racial divide and the voting history in our country in this very building. It shows, as he says, how far we have come as a jurisdiction. And I'd certainly like to open the floor for any questions that you might have with respect to it. Mr. Bragman?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. You want to stand up?
Sure.
I saw this piece of time. I suggest course of action. But let me give an example. You're painting a roof. Okay? I have one bucket, 6-gallon bucket, and 2 5-gallon buckets. Mix maybe 12 buckets. I put the mixture in there, and I put half in there. So I say, you take this bundle and you put it that you're going to use. Another bucket for the side. So it's not going to
Sure.
It's going to do it his way. So I said to him, he learns of his mistakes is wise. The person who learns from his mistakes, the mistakes of others, is wise. I said all that to say, why do you have to invent the airplane before it's done? So use it and make it better. I heard a lot of quotes from the young people. I didn't hear any quotes from theirs. I didn't hear any quote of yours but yours. You gave me quotes from other people. Next time I'll hear a quote from yourself. Second point. When the students go away to school, they say, you always said you have to get an education. Okay? Now, you got an education, you come back and you expect to the door. Well, let me tell you something. If you come back, you got a job, and that job is held by a farm. Let's say farm. That then, they stay in that job for him. And it doesn't matter what degree you have, how much money you spent on it, you have for an open. Now, I like for the young people to address the term, and when the breastfed party came in, they said we got the term, and when the business people pressure on them, they caved in. They said if you don't give them the term, and if you take away the term limits, then they do came in. And I said, came in, go ahead. But the term limits benefited us. The term limits benefited Bermudians because we said 6 years. After 6 years, I'm not going to be real long. After 6 years.
Not too long?
No.
When
I'm finished.
All right.
After 6 years, the people who are overseas come to work, they had to that job had to be a hard. And if a local is fine, then that person is to go back to them or find a job somewhere else. That benefited us, but that was removed from us, and now it also benefited us. So you can get all the education you like. There's no guarantee you got a job and you come.
I want to give all the people an opportunity to
I
talk.
know that.
All right.
I'm finished. So
All
I'm
right.
just suggesting that deal with, if you're getting with the education, fine, but you
Yeah.
have to be able to determine. I want to say is, Mr. Barritt. I live in constituency of Randy. I don't know what to say about him. Well, Randy Horton, what you say? Okay, let's say 30. Randy Horton. I lived there. I moved from there, and I'm now in this man right here's constituency. Then it's listed. This 34, 35. 35. Now, Mr. Barritt, you said that me, or President Michael said, in 32. Did you say that?
No.
You said that if a person, you said that if a person lives in
Mr.
Washington
Bragg,
City.
I'm gonna ask you, if you have a question for him, I want to give everybody an opportunity.
Okay, the question is it an offense? Is it an offense for me to formerly live in 32 and now live in 34? Is it an offense for me to vote in 32?
Thank you, Mr. Brangman. The first thing I want to say is this, that I wasn't saying that if you lived in 32, 35, you could vote in 32. What I said was that was wrong. That some people who recognize that their vote may have been more of a constituency, let's say number 32, than in 35, where Mr. Lister gets returned with a handsome majority every election, may be tempted to stay on the register in 32 rather than re-register in 35, and that is wrong.
It's an offense.
I'm coming to that. I do not believe it is an offense. What it is challengeable action. That is, you could be challenged when you pitched up on the day to vote in 32 on the basis that you no longer reside there and are improperly registered. And if someone is bold enough to challenge you on that day and has the facts, you may be required to sign an affidavit that said, in which you state that no, I am still living in 32 and therefore am properly entitled to vote in 32. And your vote, I believe, goes in the box. But that affidavit that gets considered, and if it is proven that you have not told the truth on that affidavit, then you may be in some trouble with the courts.
Thank you very much.